When you're building an application, there's a lot of pressure to keep security vulnerabilities out of your code. But no matter how skilled you are, between your own code, dependencies, and configurations, you can't catch them all on your own. But that's why Snyk's here. We're the secure development platform that can extend the security reach of every developer. With Snyk, you don't have to handle security vulnerabilities on your own. Snyk. Develop fast. Stay secure.
Hello, dear developers, and we are back to our stage 1 of the third day of VIA Developers JavaScript Congress. We have many more awesome technical talks for you, and our speakers are ready. I'll be moderator for the rest of the day for stage 1. I'm Maxim Salnikov. I stream now directly live from Oslo, Norway, where I live. It's my great pleasure to support VR developers in moderator's role, I believe second or third time. Briefly about myself, I work in Microsoft as a developer engagement lead, and I run multiple meetups and conferences myself. So being on this stage of this kind of technical conferences is not something new for me, and I'm always accepting these invitations to moderate conferences like this one. Okay, our next speaker, and babam, folks, you know, I will be the next speaker. Yes, first I was accepted as a speaker for JavaScript Congress, and then organizers asked me to moderate some days for half of days, and of course I agreed. And well, then, without any other delay, I just want to start my session. But before this, I want to say thank you very much to companies that support JavaScript Congress. We have lots of partners, media partners, and of course, community partners. My special love goes to these community-driven organizations and events. Thanks for supporting JavaScript Congress. Okay, now, just quick reminder that please send your questions. I hope that you'll have few of them or many of them using either chat or Q&A section. And right after I completed my last slide, I will immediately switch to the live chat, and yeah, I will try to find all the answers, and maybe I want to hear your immediate feedback. Just tell me what you think about the topic I present and about my talk. We are talking about native web apps next 35-ish minutes. On my session, we'll answer two questions. First, we'll try to understand what exactly makes the feeling of the particular application as a native. Native, it could not be very generic, right? It's always native for some context. We have different platforms or different operating systems, different devices. And to be native for this particular operating system, device, or this combination, of course, application has to follow, let's say, the rules of this application system, operating system, leverage all possibilities from both software and hardware. So we'll go through some points what exactly builds this feeling for our users and us ourselves. We are all users of this or that application, multiple ones per day. And then, since we are conference about web technologies, we'll try to map our findings about what makes application feel native to what we have in web front end, to be precise. So we'll talk about web APIs available for us as for developers to delight our users. I already briefly introduced my use the opportunity Microsoft, and I run multiple communities related to web and mobile development in Oslo, in Norway, where I live. And yeah, I'm a Google developer expert for web technology, capabilities, and installability section. And folks, let's stay connected. I'll post the link to my Twitter one more time in live chat after I complete my session. But right now, you can go and start following me on WebMaxRU. I tweet mainly about web front-end, cloud technologies, and progressive web applications. Let's go. First, we start with a brief chat about whatever makes web as application platform at all. So we have a discussion about native applications, right? But let's do a step back. Let's give some nice points why web as a platform is a nice place where we build our applications, where we distribute our applications, and yeah, where we use these applications. Well, there are plenty of good parts of web. First, we and our users, which is more important, right, have browsers that are evergreen. That means that in majority of scenarios, we don't have to care about if this or that feature is supported or not. We can stop worrying about this right after we properly apply progressive enhancement strategy and feature detection as a driving mechanism of this strategy, right? So we can always have core of our web application running on pretty much all the browsers, or at least majority, and then for some newer ones, we can provide this or that enhancement. And the newer browser, the better user experience will happen. JavaScript as a language, it's quite diverse in terms of ways we can architect our application. We can apply let's say procedural approach. We can go for object-oriented. We can go for functional. All the possibilities are for us. And maybe this statement about language as a singular is outdated, right? Because now we have plural language available natively for web. Of course, I'm talking now about WebAssembly and all these endless possibilities provided by using backend language, or like normally used for backend language for building web app. And of course, I'm not even talking about a bunch of possibilities, language that can be transpiled to JavaScript. Where to run our JavaScript code? Of course, in the piece of the browser, which is called JavaScript engine. There are multiple, and all developers of these engines are putting lots of efforts into make them as performant as possible. Even, you know, if our code is not always optimal, in many cases it could be mitigated just by the fact that the engine is so well optimized that our users will not suffer. Tooling, I already mentioned a piece of this. For example, when we transpile other language to the one understood by browsers, in background, I mean, once we set all the flow, it just works, and we don't care about any other extra actions. Level of support from IDE's side, the best in class. This is my strong belief for JavaScript. We have IntelliSense, we have GitHub Copilot after all, but this is really cool thing. Please check this out. Yeah, so we cannot complain on state of tooling in a very broad understanding, of course. And after all, folks, we are few millions, or maybe 10 plus million developers who built on JavaScript. That means that we can find pretty much everything we can ever dream about. Framework, welcome. Library to complete some tasks for our application, of course. Any kind of like UI library or whatever, or question or answer on your question or solving some issue. You just have to know the places where you can get tools, support, and just have fun from building applications for web as platform. That sounds really positive, and there are lots of advantages, right? But of course, there are some disadvantages, and I just want to list two of them. Historically, web as a platform really depends on connection status, and even after users open some URL, even after we know that it might be in HTTP cache, for example, all these resources they downloaded, next time they hit refresh, and if there is no connection, most likely they will see offline dyno or server not found or network not found or something like this. So now, luckily, we have all proper tools for us as web front-end developers to mitigate these consequences, to really detach our application from this dependency on always being connected to internet. Of course, in that sense, I'm talking about service worker API and satellite APIs. Now we definitely can build fully offline ready, offline first, offline friendly applications where we maintain granular control on every single resource, every single asset that was ever downloaded. So we have full control with using service worker API, cache API, and similar APIs from this family. But for today's session, I want to raise another, let's say, disadvantage that web had before. It's another dependency on always being within browser. If we talk about web application, and by the way, web application, I mean pretty much everything: web page, website, web project, web solution, you name it. Just nowadays, it's common to call everything as a web application. So we have this kind of app thinking, well, this is exactly how idea called progressive web application started. More than say 6 years ago, there was a blog post from Alex Russell, who actually didn't invent all completely new APIs, completely new specifications. He just merged what we had by those years together in one very strong, let's say, selling point called progressive web application. And it started, all discussion started like how to get rid of dependency on being always in browser context, how to start thinking about what we built using web technologies as about applications. Fast forward to our days, and in a recently released version, PWA chapter of Web Almanac, driven by an organization called HTTP Archive, you will find following numbers. More than 3% of web origins, web addresses are controlled by service workers these days. And the fact that page is under control of service worker, most likely it has some nice features from PWA family, either offline readiness or installability, or hopefully both. And this 3% serves actually almost 1/5 of world traffic. Of course, here we say about particular sample of URLs. I believe it's around 7 million address scan, but it's quite a representative part of internet. So we have kind of safely extrapolated to worldwide web. Sounds really interesting, right? And if we dive deeper into metric about installability, and this is our core topic for today's session, we can estimate around 1.5 million addresses as installable experience, as a web site that you can install on your device. If we dive a bit deeper into the internal comparison of native applications and web applications, we can build this kind of diagram, and of course, by nativeness, native applications are better, right? And what do I mean exactly by nativeness? This is number and let's say depth or quality of all these small integration points between application and its surrounding operating system, hardware, like literally everything what builds this environment. And in case of web, yeah, it's unparalleled reach. You cannot compete with linkability, openness, discoverability of websites. Like, yeah, if you use some application stores or some other ways to distribute your applications, it always will lose web by its reach. And yeah, not a secret that PWA tries to grab best from these two worlds, best part from native and best part from web applications. Good, now we have all the context. Let's list this interaction, or like integration, a better word, points of between application and its environment, and then just map to existing web APIs. So you always keep in mind what's available, what's coming, how to get ready for building cool applications, or not just get ready, but some pieces are already available. So increase quality of your web apps. I grouped all these points I found into few categories. First, it all starts with the way we install and run application. Then application has some, let's say, place on the user screen, on user device screen, and I just called this category windowing. How exactly your application is, let's say, playing with the environment UI-wise. Then we want to reach out to some features of operating system from our application. This is what I called outbound integrations. And also, operating system can also invoke some features from our application, like start application, maybe use some extra features. This is what in inbound integrations group. And then we'll really briefly go through notifications. This is also a very important part of this connection. And of course, here I exclusively mention native notifications. I mean, not the ones we built as a part of UI of our app, but the ones exposed by operating system itself, of course, via our application. And well, it's impossible to build more or less complex application these days without having some tasks kind of detached from the main thread or scheduled and disconnected from general application lifecycle. So background tasks. Access to hardware is absolutely must-have. Our modern devices have awesome media capabilities, tons of different sensors, and we want to use them straight from our application code without any intermediate layers. Before you start experimenting with what's available, I strongly recommend you to turn on all the flags you have in your browser related to PWA. You just filter by PWA and then turn everything on. Some of the features I will talk on the next slides are available only under the flag or via trial origin. This is another interesting concept to give a try for particular pieces of functionality without asking your users to go and enable flags. Of course, this approach is not scalable, right? But trial origin is. I recommend you to learn more about that. Good. Now let's do a round trip from first category to last category from the ones I listed. Installation and run. First, about criteria for having our web application, web project, website, you name it, installable. Currently, there are two of them. First, you have to have correctly formatted web application manifest. And this file will talk about in next minutes many times. Actually, all main integration points are happening. We are some properties we have as a part of web app manifest. And second, we need to have service worker correctly created and with fetch handler. So browser assumes that if you have fetch handler in your service worker, then you provide at least basic offline experience. Of course, this is kind of best guess, but this is how this criteria is looking now. Here is example of web app manifest. Just core properties I listed in this example, and the obligatory ones are even fewer than you see on your screens. I don't remember exactly the specification, but it's name, icons, and start URL, I believe, something like this. Here I listed few more, let's say, strongly recommended ones to have. Basically, this is just meta information about our app, because if we call something application, we have to give it at least a name and at least icons, right? This is user experience we all used to on pretty much every device. And also, you might notice that I gave this file name with extension .webmanifest. Still, I believe 99% of web app manifest deployed with JSON extension, but the latest specification says that it's good to have web manifest as extension. So, of course, under the hood, this file is JSON formatted, right? But to provide some extra context to the browser, yeah, why not to go for what specification says? To be honest, I didn't notice any difference, but yeah, let's follow the standards, my recommendation. And then you can or your users can install your web application. So they just go to yourwebsite.com, they see some icon appears on the address bar, and this icon is very different on different browsers, and the texting around this icon is also very different. So they will see dialog about do you want to install, if they click this icon. Then example from Windows 10 operating system, they can fine-tune the application somehow. For example, they can pin it to taskbar, to start menu, and even run application on system start. And that's pretty much it. Now you have installed application. Hopefully it's offline ready. You have to provide this support. You have to build the support using service worker. And it's fully supported from operating system in terms of you can uninstall this using standard dialog. At least this is how it happens on Windows. Furthermore, you can fine-tune some settings of this application. Next part here is the fact that you can provide some shortcuts to start your application in a specific way. Again, we refer back to our web app manifest. The file you see under name site.webmanifest. In my example, this is of course just example name, and using property called shortcuts, you provide another icon. It might be same or different. Maybe different is better. You provide name for this particular menu item, how to start, and exact action in form of URL your application will have. And then on the right click, like native applications, you will see this list of shortcuts, and yeah, you can give possibility to your users start your application in some particular state or section, or you name it. Just not as a home page. And then launch mode. If we talk about application, right, we somehow launch it, and there are multiple options available. For example, we can think about user experience as one window application, right? And we don't want to have multiple instances of our application open on the screen, on the device at the same time. So we can say that when time comes to open our application, and we'll dedicate a separate slide to different ways to open this, we direct people, users, to the instance if the existing instance if it's there, right? And or we can open completely new one. That really depends on how we architect our application, how we build a user interface. And if we redirect to existing instance, we have a chance to either navigate immediately to the URL that was requested, or postpone it and decide ourselves in the code what to do. Maybe we want to launch not again home screen but something else, and we have corresponding API in our JavaScript to get these parameters that were used during the launch. That's super flexible. That provides all possibilities for us to launch applications in multiple ways. Now, about how exactly application might look in the environment of operating system, like UI-wise. We have a property called display in web app manifest. And we have a property called display override, which is for newer browsers that support some extra properties, extra options in that sense. Maybe for majority of the application, property standalone is good enough, but we also can start application in full screen. We also can start it with minimal UI, for example, back button, which will be native from the browser, not part of our UI, might work good for some legacy scenarios. And for example, if we go for the recently available option called window control overlay, we can even put some pieces of our UI into title bar. Isn't that cool? We can now utilize 100% of visible part of the application, of the window for our application. And of course, it's a bit more challenging UI-wise, but we have all properties as developers, both from CSS side and JavaScript side. So we can position precisely all these elements. It could be buttons, icons, text, whatever, on the title bar. Then next option, status bar, we can just disable this, so nothing to explain here. So maybe for native apps it looks more native when there is no any kind of status bar. And tabbed experience, this is a bit challenging one. So technically this is just another option for display, and there is a separate checkbox for users to have it as a tabbed experience. But my experiments show that this is not, let's say, completely ready in the modern browsers yet. At least this is a somehow strange position. So you see this is a bit broken UI, but the idea is beautiful. We love to build our applications in a very broad sense with some tabs as a part of UI, right? And what do we normally do as web developers? We either use some UI library with these tabs, or recreate them themselves using CSS, JavaScript. So why to invent this very, very useful, very often used UI element if we have this built into the browsers, right? So here is the main point of tabbed display is to build our UI using native tabs. That's really cool. So let's wait for the stable version of this. Outbound integrations, when we want to use some pieces of operating system from our app. First and foremost, we have WebShare API. This is quite mature one. It's for a few years in production in all the browsers. And it's just about invoking native share dialog. Share to Twitter or Facebook or whatever social media providers installed on this particular device, or Outlook. Yeah, the list of target applications is different for every device, for every users, and we can add our application into this list ourselves, but wait a bit, it's on the next section. And our goal here is to just invoke this native dialog. We don't care how that looks. It looks differently on different operating systems, obviously, because we are talking about native experience, right? And then we get status. Was this sharing successful or not? Same idea for contact picker API. Straight from JavaScript, we invoke native dialog to pick the contacts from address book, which is on this particular device. And again, all these concepts are very different from for different operating systems. But as a result, we just get contacts in our JavaScript code, and then we can do whatever we want with them. Really mind-blowing idea to get full access, or not full, but at least some access to operating to file system straight from our JavaScript code. And this is not like future, this is reality. If you wish to check it, just go to vscode.dev and you will see VS Code running in your browser. There is a button, open folder, and of course there will be extra permission request. But after all, JavaScript that drives VS Code will get access to file system on your device. So it's both read and write access. That's really amazing. Next part, inbound integrations. How our application can be started, invoked, somehow reached out from the side of operating system. First, let's talk about protocol handlers. Yes, folks, now we can go and register our very own, very custom protocol, which we can give any name. In my sample, I called my protocol Web plus BPM. This is a sample for my pet project called BPM Techno. And now, if I type in the browser not HTTPS, but Web plus BPM : / and some parameters, my application will start. And so this will not show some errors, but once I register this protocol in Web App Manifest, it just works. Two next concepts are quite similar and different at the same time. Let's start from declarative link capturing. This part of Web App Manifest says how to open links that were captured by our application. So it's quite similar to launch handler. It also answers the question if we open in new window or existing one. But this one, it answers questions when to capture the links, and this is a bit sophisticated concept because there are multiple options to capture the link, to use this link not as just a next tab in the browser, but instead of launch our application. Again, in our Web App Manifest, we can list some origins that where we will capture links from. And it's really amazing that it could be not only our own origin, the scope of web application, which we provide in Web App Manifest, but also some third-party ones. And that opens doors to building, for example, partner integrations for our app. Of course, since this is about security and privacy, these origins which we ask capture links to our application should deploy special file, special like explanation and special confirmation that yes, even if user types in the address bar or click the link in one of installed application with this partner URL, still our PWA should open instead of just going to that URL in the browser. This, maybe this is a bit sophisticated, and furthermore, this API is now under active, let's say, refactoring. So let's stop here, and I will keep you posted what happens next, because this might be slightly simplified and a bit more focused on real use cases. Going back to application system, now we can register our PWA, our web application, as a handler for particular type of file extensions. Just amazing. You double click on something.mp3 and not native application opens, but our web application, the ones that register this file handler. And of course, we have access to all this array of files that were like invoked to start our application. And I already mentioned about share target. So share target API is complementary to share API. This is the way we register our application as a target for this native sharing dialog. Just imagine people click share from any application and they see a native sharing dialog, and there are Twitter, Facebook, and your PWA. That's really amazing. And of course, in your app, you receive all the parameters you got after someone shared something with your application. So then you decide what to do with this URL and description. Notifications. Well, they are with us for quite a few years. I'm talking about Web Push API specifically, so nothing to really add here, except the fact that hopefully soon we will get Web Push API available in Apple devices, in iPhones and iPads. There are some positive signals showing that the work is going on that topic. Beijing, another interesting concept of making your application looking more native in operating system. It's about just providing some badges over application icon. Again, not a new concept. It's very popular among native applications when we have, for example, number of unread messages. And a bit more future-looking concept, notification triggers. API now is also under, let's say, refactor. That's the way for us to schedule notifications in the future. So the main difference from web push notifications is the fact that we don't need any kind of backend. We just schedule to show particular notification. Of course, here I talk about native ones in the future. And at this time point, your application can be like not in the foreground. There is no need to run it at all. But once scheduled, the notification will be shown. Super briefly about background tasks. Again, not very new APIs, but it's a good idea that they are evolving. Here, I just want to emphasize very cool part of DevTools, where you can go and record the events that invoke background part of your code, because it's a bit challenging to debug and test, since these events can come in quite unpredictable way. After all, this is background tasks. I cannot complain about current state of accessing hardware capabilities. Tons of different APIs for pretty much every hardware feature you can imagine. So the question could be where to follow all these latest and greatest updates. Answer is quite simple. There is a project called Fugu. I bet you heard about this. It's with us for a few years, quite a few years. You can just go there and you filter all upcoming APIs by PWA, and yeah, you will see pretty much everything what I introduced, and definitely there are some new things are coming for better integration application and operating system and hardware. A couple more useful links for you, different incubators, and also a description of origin trial concept I mentioned. This is a super useful way for trying out all these new capabilities for broader audience, not only for you and your team as developers, but you can ask pretty much everyone to test it in how that works for their browser, for their operating system. Okay, so let's just list these categories one more time. This is everything I gathered for you. And are we there yet? You folks give this answer. So I don't know. For me, we definitely are very close to the parity of what web can do and what native can do. In some points, web applications are better than native ones. In some points, of course, we are lagging a bit behind. But yes, it's an individual answer for every developer and every team. Last question I want to give answer on is where to host your native web application, your progressive web application, or maybe just classic web application so far. Here, I recommend you to have a look at service from Azure Cloud called Azure Static Web Apps. It's very simple to start with this. You just point to GitHub repo, and in a few seconds, you'll see your application hosted and distributed over multiple data centers on our planet. And there is a very nice, generous, free tier, so you do not spend any dollars on hosting. So just go to this URL or scan this QR code with your device right here, right now. On that, I want to say thank you very much. Thanks for staying with me. And I'm going to check if there are some questions in the chat and Q&A section. Okay, this is our Jubilo. Okay, lots of hellos in live chat. Hello, folks. And now I open Q&A. Yeah, there are a few questions. Let me briefly go through. No one speaks about HTTP protocol that is a condition. Am I wrong? Question from Emmanuel. You are absolutely right, Emmanuel. I a bit simplified the criteria, maybe because for me HTTPS is not something nice to have, but really close to must have these days. I personally, when open a website which is not under HTTPS, I tend to just close this tab because I do not trust. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We can call our application progressive or native only if it's served under HTTPS. I hope that it's the case in all your scenarios. Then next question, or it's more like comment. Is it a good idea to have one code base for web application and native application? It looks to me that a separate code base might be a better idea. Well, this is a very good question, and this is an open question. We can definitely dedicate a separate session or multiple sessions to discuss this. There is definitely no one size fits all. But I'd say that from my experience, for many kinds of the application, a unified code base is the best solution. Just yeah, it's about saving on everything, on speed of development, on cost of development, on cost of support. So why not to check that all? Next question is from Nick. How would you deploy PWA for iPhone users? Push API is not supported and not able to install via mobile's Safari Chrome. You are only partially right, Nick, because you are able to install your progressive application on Safari on iPhone. It's a bit hidden feature. I don't know why. So you will not see, let's say, any prominent hints. But if you click this icon, I believe it's share or something, you will find a menu item called Add to Home Screen. And if your application is a PWA, it contains Service Worker, Web App Manifest, this will be not just shortcut on the home screen. This will be actually like installed application with all assets pre-cached. Of course, if you wrote corresponding code. So then you can safely go on offline and check if the application works, and it should. And I already mentioned that Web Push API is not supported yet, but it's coming. I hope it's coming. At least there are some very relevant commits to WebKit repo. And I go for the next question from Adnan. PWA seem like they are closing the gap on native application. Yes, exactly. What do you think are the biggest hurdles PWA currently has to overcome to become the main way of developing applications? The main issue, the main problem of progressive web applications is the fact that let's say we do not explore them enough. I mean, I run multiple sessions on all kinds of progressive web applications. There are many folks who present about PWAs, but still many developers didn't even try, and many businesses didn't even consider this as an option. So the problem is not technical. The problem is about, let's say, proper information about PWAs. And the last one from Alexander. How possible easy is it to distribute PWA via Android and iOS application stores? Are there known limitations? There should be some from Apple side, right? There are. And I'd say that distributing your PWA to Google Play and to Microsoft Store is a question of couple of clicks of registering corresponding developer accounts, which are free for Google and Microsoft, and it's like submitting some forms. You don't have to be neither Android developer nor Windows native developer. This is what happened with me. I'm web developer, web front-end developer, but I have my application, this BPM Techno I already mentioned, both in Google Play and Microsoft Store. And I used a tool called PWA Builder that created all assets I deployed for me. I will give a link to live chat right after I complete I complete our dialogue. And about iOS, yes, it's a bit more challenging, starting from the fact that you have to have paid developer subscription, which is, I believe, $99 per year. But same tool, same pwabuilder.com, by the way, created by Michael Wiggs from Microsoft, just a couple of weeks ago, got support for App Store, for Apple App Store, and the idea is the same. You just submit link to your application, literally HTTPS mywebsite.com, and you download ready to deploy assets to particular store. That's just amazing. And about limitations. Well, everything what web can do, your application can do. It's for example, again, back to my example. It's an application that measures BPM of the live audio stream. So I use microphone of the device. I use it straight from JavaScript code, and it works perfectly well, both on Android and on Microsoft Store. Let me check. Yes, I believe these were all questions from you. I answered everything. As I promised, I will post a few links to live chat window of this session. So stay tuned here for a few extra minutes. And on that, thank you very much. Nice questions, nice audience. It was my pleasure.
UiPath Studio. One tool, one installer. 3 ways to automate for every kind of developer. UiPath Studio is intuitive and has many simple templates to get you started quickly. There's detailed documentation and free training with UiPath Academy. And because they are all on the same product, you can share your automations and collaborate on more complex projects, enabling good ideas to flow throughout the company. Get started with Studio today.